So once we have our thing placed, our stadium, our model properly placed on the axis, and we make sure that it's scaled properly, the next thing that we need to do is we need to check the structure to see if there are any changes that we need to make in order to make it work with Out of the Park. The big one is that oftentimes when people put together stadiums in 3D, they insert specific rows. So you'll notice that in this model, fortunately, our person has just created an image that they've painted on in order to create the appearance of there being seats there. What other people will do is they'll actually build rows with individual seats in them. And then you actually have to go through and delete each one of those seats and delete each one of the rows, and it is just a pain. My recommendation would be if you're trying to convert one of those stadiums, don't, because you're going to spend a lot of time. In fact, almost more time than you would if you just tried to build it from scratch. But if you come across a stadium that just has images for the seats and it looks like everything else in the stadium structurally looks pretty sound, which I think this one does, I don't think there's going to have to be a lot of tweaks we're going to have to do to the structure in order to make it work Out of the Park. Then you can proceed to kind of the next step. And so in the next step, what we need to do is we need to change all of the different images in here in order to make sure that they will show up Out of the Park. And there are kind of three different types of images we're going to need to change. So the first is we're going to need to make sure that whatever we're using for seating is going to correspond with the pictures that are used for the 3D crowds Out of the Park. So you'll notice that in this model, and I forgot to explode it, which is something you need to do because you want to make sure that you're able to edit all the different parts. So we're going to explode this a few different times, I think. There we go. So we have all of our different parts now available to us. And you will notice that we just had the ground blackout, and I have an idea about why that is, and we'll talk about it in a second. But so you'll notice that in these different seating sections, we have kind of empty bleachers. Now, if you just load this into Out of the Park as is, you're not going to get the 3D crowds because there's a specific image that we need to use. And if you download Silvam's image text or images and SketchUp materials link, you will get the different crowds. So you've got crowd new 1, 2, 3, 4. There are a few other options that he has. If you want to use 3D crowds Out of the Park, you're going to need to download these. Now, since this is a spring training stadium, I'm just going to use the crowd 3 new. Actually, I'm going to do 2. It matters when you're doing 3D stuff. It doesn't matter if you're not doing the 3D crowds. And so what we do then is we just paint them in to the different seat sections. And that way, these crowds will show up Out of the Park. And if you change to include the 3D crowds, which Silvam shows you how to do in his section, it will then show up properly. Now you'll notice that over here we have the crowd on one side, and then on this other side it's blank. Now, in order for things to show up Out of the Park baseball, you actually need to have it painted on both sides, and I think this is the reason why a lot of the SketchUp stadiums don't actually import easily into Out of the Park, is because you're missing the painting on the second side. Now, the easy way to address this is just to right-click on a texture, go to Select, all with the same material, and so you'll see how it's now selecting all the faces that have exactly the same crowd on it. I then just go up here, click on that, and I can then scroll down here to where that is, click on it, and then press OK. So that is the first type of thing that you're going to want to do, is to go through and change your crowd textures. Now, the second thing, which is connected to what you just saw, is to go and make sure that all of your different that all the different faces are painted on the correct side, and to make sure that the white or light side is facing out. So the easy way to do this is to go up to where are you? View, go to Component or Face Style, and go to Monochrome. And so what that will then show you is that you can see right now that it is all the white sides that are facing out, so that's what it is that we need. Now I can select everything. I think I'm going to scan out to make sure I got everything. And then if I go back to View, Face Style, go to shaded with texture, and now I right click and press reverse faces. You'll see that a lot of the textures in here are currently blank. And so that's the reason why it is that when if you were to load this into a game, you would just kind of see a lot of blackness kind of showing up. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is to go up here to the in model textures. And you're going to want to right click in between each one of these, you're going to right click, press select, and then you'll see up here that you then have the ability to change the faces. So you're going to go through and do that for each and every single one of these textures in order to make sure that you have them all painted through. So I'm just going to do a couple of these to show you before I then go and do the third type of change that we need to make, right? So we've got now the fence is going to be fixed. And then I'm just going to come down here and grab the Florida flag. I'm going to select, and you're going to want to select off in between each one because otherwise you can accidentally end up selecting multiple textures. So I'm actually just going to make sure. Yep, so no selection. Then I'm going to go to select. And that one's already perfect. So in between each texture, you're going to want to make sure that you select it and then click out somewhere off the map so you have no selection and then select it again. Okay, so that is the second thing that we need to do after we do the crowds is we need to go through and we need to make sure that all the faces are painted on both sides with the same texture.